of knowing.
All right, man. Welcome to Crrow 777 Radio. This is episode 437. Jason Lindgren is with me, and Brandon Sibley, also known as Big Sib, is returning. These are important ideas that people who are getting involved with legal ideas, you might want to listen up. First off, if we have not had somebody in the legal realm on this show, there is a reason for it. Do you understand what I just said? I'm not going to start fights with people in the world, but we see a lot of people go down in flames doing basically, I'll be blunt, stupid things. We have seen scamming. Here, pay me this much money and I'll write up this thing for you. Then they use it, then they go to jail. This is simple. Adults in this world are autonomous. They don't need a mommy and daddy telling them what to do. What that means is they're educated to a level, or they have educated themselves to a level. There's a rule of thumb that we use here when we cover legal ideas. And we learned the hard way, like so many do. You may notice that way back, we covered a lot more legal ideas than we do now. And we've zeroed in on certain voices. Here's the reason. They can show the logic or the history or the statutes or anything else that got them where they are. They have implemented it successfully, and others have replicated their success. It's a pretty simple rule of thumb. What we're seeing now is a bunch of people acting like children and guessing. And legal ideas are not a thing to guess at. There can be serious consequences. And if your big idea is, I don't like that my rights are getting violated, and then you get yourself tossed into the clink or fined, what was the point of all that? And I know that's a bit of a rant, but you got to comprehend before you do things. Anyhow, welcome, Jason.
And a very hot good morning.
All right. Welcome, Big Sib.
Thank you for having me, Crrow. Glad to be back. And I really hope that this information that we share today helps somebody out there who's on the fence. But we have to go back to foundational knowledge before we move forward. And I think that's the basis of what everybody, the misinformation campaign also works on this side too, because misinformation leads you to confusion. So you have to have a foundational knowledge to base everything that you're going to move forward on. And I hope we do that well today. And we don't see any more people taking advantage of, but that's human nature. Our human nature is predicated on one thing and one thing only. We want the path of least resistance and the easier road to take. And there's always going to be scam artists out there preying on people who are looking for that easy way out.
The internet is an easy place to get lost. And I can't even tell you how often we get contacted by some big legal names that are showing this, that, or the other thing. But we get a behind the scenes view that those very names that are leading people are reaching out to other people that we actually respect, saying, I'm in trouble here. What do I do? That is not a leader. That is not someone to follow. And the main point here is we're going to try to lay down no nonsense. If you don't comprehend what you are doing, if you think you can just get a document that you don't even understand and mail it in or deliver it somewhere, you are sadly mistaken. You have to comprehend. It is your responsibility to comprehend what your rights are. It is your responsibility to defend them. Another thing that goes on a lot is in the legal areas where people meet online, some people have been there so long, they've seen the same question asked 1,000 times, and they're just not going to answer that question again. So just know what you are doing. Figure out who the respected names are. And by the way, Brandon, some people that I respect at the top of the game here respect you. So I am not guessing when I have guests on. And by the way, if I found out something went down the toilet, I would immediately get back in front of the mic and I would say as much. But anyhow, where would you like to jump in?
Well, let's start at the beginning, right? Foundational knowledge needed before moving forward. Okay, so in our system of jurisprudence, we must understand something that you say all the time, right? There's no lie in nature. Okay, so many people hear you say this, but what we don't actually tie it to what it actually means. And that means what we observe, what we see, the sun, moon, stars, everything in nature is going to be exactly what it's supposed to be. And that's just a fact. So we know what nature's about. It's an observable truth, right? It is what it is. So objectively speaking, we must accept what is. And so we cannot, through our subjective thoughts and beliefs, go stand inside a courtroom, Okay, so we have a common law system of government here. And yes, we're far away from its prime operation. There's no doubt about this, but the system itself is good. It's the people around us that have no inner knowing, no foundational knowledge. And yes, this is a good old boy system. It's like the little lady that I'm helping in Texas, right? She goes to court and you got the lawyers and the judge, and they're buddies, right? Well, you have to defeat that with their rules and their statutes and tie them together that they're violating your individual liberties. So when you go to the world of Caesar, okay, it has to be in black and white. And I say Caesar because it's just an idea, right? That's what people don't grasp, is that the Constitution is what protects our rights. It doesn't grant any rights. We have this beautiful, beautiful system, this beautiful document called the Declaration of Independence. It's just an idea written on paper. Okay, it's a great idea, but it is up to us, the individuals, to apply it, right? And so we must understand what it actually means. And for us to do that, we can't be in the realm of clown cuckoo land thinking that you're going to walk into a courtroom and that you have a higher status than those on the other side. Well, that is unequal, okay? That means if somebody was to bring a civil or criminal charge, say the state or whatever, would bring something against you, you could walk into that courtroom and say, well, I'm a sovereign man, free man on the land. I don't have to be here. Well, you're not facing your accuser. Now we're outside the common law, and common law means it's common to all of us, right? Everybody has the right to face their accuser. Everybody has the right to discovery, and discovery and these tools that Dr. Graves has taught in his course. The primary goal of that is to ascertain the truth. So facts matter, truth matters, and these things that we talk about in the law have to have a beginning, right? And you can follow them all the way through. It's in black and white. The idea is written on paper. So you have to accept that objective truth that this system of jurisprudence operates on. You can't just throw your own subjective thoughts into it and then go, okay, well, it's going to work the way I want it to. Well, then that wouldn't apply equally to everyone around us.
All right. So just let me say a couple things. First of all, Dr. Graves is no joke. He has helped so many people with his course. And people say, well, I'm not going to pay any money. Well, then don't pay any money and don't take his course and don't know things. Dr. Graves' episodes are 342 and 364. There were previous episodes with Big Sib. Those are 380 and 399. And let's just make one thing very clear. There is no lie in nature. When I learned that was correct, and when I proved to myself that was correct, I began to use it as the measuring rod against everything else, to include difficult things that I couldn't work out. Once I brought it back and used nature as my measuring tool, I know things like this is a construct. Here's an example, 0. I use 0 every day, but I know it's a construct. Nature does not show me that 0 is real. There is no thing in nature. There is everything in nature. So just to make the point, that is in the beginning of Big Sib's notes, and it's critically important because the law was not built on whimsy, right? There are systems in place.
Okay, so let's start off with explaining what the adversarial system of jurisprudence is. And I have the enlightened opinion that it's the best system ever devised by man, but it's a system built on invisible principles, right? We talked about this last time. Justice is jurisprudence, fortitude, and temperance, right? These ideas are the basis of the law, but the law must be written down on paper for us all to follow. In its simplest terms, an adversary system resolves disputes by presenting conflicting views of fact and law to an impartial and relatively passive arbiter. Now, this is the design of it, but the truth is today that we don't have this passive arbiter. We have judges sitting on the bench in these municipal courts that are tied to the law firms, right? And it's operated this way for so long, you'll hear people say this is business as usual. Well, no, that's not true. That's not how this system was set up, and it's not how it truly operates. So if you follow what Dr. Graves teaches, what Alphonse teaches, and what many others teach, is the liar, once he tells a lie. And so I want to say this right now too. God is a spirit and must be worshiped in spirit and truth. You can't separate these two ideas. Is truth your true passion to move forward, and it should be. And while I'm doing that, if you don't mind, Crrow, I want to read a quote from Marcus Aurelius, if you don't mind. And it's a huge quote, Stoic philosophy. It's a big deal. It means something to me, and I hope it means something to you also. And what I want to say to this is, when you actually live this out in existence, when you alter your reality to fit truth, you're no longer in the insane set of mind. If anyone can refute me, show me I'm making a mistake or looking at things from the wrong perspective, I'll gladly change. It's the truth I'm after. And the truth never harmed anyone. What harms us is to persist in self-deceit and ignorance. So as I continue moving forward with this discussion, just notice that what's written on paper, how the system is supposed to operate, is not operating correctly, because we, the people, you and I, the individuals who are supposed to keep these checks and balances in place, have left our duty. And it's coming back now, and it's going to continue to come back. Okay, so we have this relatively passive arbiter who decides which side wins what. In the United States, however, the phrase adversary system is synonymous with the American system for the administration of justice, a system that was constitutionalized by the framers and that has been elaborated by the Supreme Court for 2 centuries. Thus, the adversary system represents far more than a simple model for resolving disputes. Rather, it consists of a core of basic rights that recognize and protect the dignity of the individual. And this is the most important aspect of what we have in place here, is that the individual is above the common good of those around us. If you want to comment there, Crrow, I'll stop.
I'm going to take you up on your offer. Marcus Aurelius, I'm all ears. It has been claimed that the best time to live in this world as a human being would have been the 2 or 3 predecessors and Marcus Aurelius. And for anyone out there who wants to know something about it, get the book Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, supposedly his private thoughts that got later published, but it looks like you're reading from a Buddhist monk, not a Caesar. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, in Epictetus, which was his, he was enslaved to him, but really Epictetus was a great read too, and Seneca also. And listen, guys, if you don't expand your mind with some of the great thoughts there, and we'll get to this later, right? In one of the American jurisprudence that I share is that thoughts can't be, and abstract ideas can't be patented, right? Because they belong to us all. We understand these principles. The natural law is actually written into many of our ideas in this system. And most people don't know that. Why? Because, well, it's hidden from you. And what do I mean hidden from you? It's not taught in your public schools. So you never have the thought to think about it, right? And that's by design. It is by design. We don't want a nation of thinkers. We want a nation of workers. That's John D. Rockefeller, because a man that actually thinks through things is going to be less. You're not going to be able to push him towards stupid ideas like masking up or taking vaccines or becoming whatever plethora of ideas. He's not going to comply. He's going to think them through. For instance, just for an example, when COVID came out, the first thing I did was pick up a box with the mask on it, says, disclaimer, this does not protect against any viruses. I said, well, okay, I don't need that. Why? I just read it. But that's logical thinking, right? That's just, I want to look at it. Is there any truth to this attached to any of this madness? No, but it's just compliance. Okay, so let's go. The rights that comprise the adversary system include personal autonomy, the effective assistance of counsel, equal protection of the laws, trial by jury, the rights to call and confront witnesses, and the right to require the government to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt and without the use of compelled self-incrimination. These rights and others are also included in the broad and fundamental concept that no person may be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, a concept which itself has been substantially equated with the adversary system. And so due process of the law is one of the things that sets this system apart from, say, if you go read the Chinese Constitution. The Chinese Constitution actually reads like our Constitution. The thing that's missing is due process of law, right? there's no place to go in China to force this individual liberty. But here we can all go into a courtroom, plead effectively, write effectively, and get what's called redress for your grievances. And it's a beautiful thing when you learn how to do it. I think it's Orwell's Animal Farm, maybe not. But one of his quotes that really sticks with me, if you cannot write effectively, you cannot think effectively. If you cannot think effectively, someone else will do the thinking for you. When you grasp that concept and why Orwell wrote that, is that language is a tool. And if you can equivocate, if you can write out everything that you're actually thinking, you're in a higher state of mind than those around you. And it's a very useful art. And it's being dumbed down to emojis and pronouns and all this other stupid stuff. And it really is sad to see us living in George Orwell's 1984, where you've reduced language to the point we can't even talk about higher-minded things.
Let's make what you just said, the quote that you took from Orwell, is not only is it true, it's being implemented now on a level which never has before in my lifetime. The idea that when we're saying Marcus Aurelius or these other things, here's the real deal. If you travel, if you look at literature from all over the world, you will be not narrow-minded and you will not be a bigot. The more you do that, the less those things will affect you. Now, to come back what Orwell said, if you can't write or think effectively, someone's going to do it for you. Well, now start to consider all the things we contend with. Are we living on a ball or are we living on a plane? That's pretty foundational. Where do you exist? To get that wrong means that every decision that you will make on your life is foundationally coming from error, which means you're not thinking very well, which means someone else is going to try to think for you. These are big ideas. And I'll close with this. What do you think the electric car is about, by the way? Most of us are going to have a range of about 150 miles that do the electric car thing now because we've got to get home to charge it. They have shrunk the world so that losing your bigotry by meeting other cultures and opening your narrow little mind, all that is being reversed. Nope, you're going to have this little bubble that you live in. You're not going to meet other cultures. And then the bigotry sets in, and then someone else starts thinking for you because it is very easy to manipulate a bigoted mind. So there's all that, Brandon.
Well, yeah, and while you make that point, I want to make another point too. So I live way out in the country, but I train for work, and I went to New Orleans a couple of weeks ago, and I see a different mindset in the cities, right? And it's like the hive mind. It really is. It's based on that group think mantra, and it's very sad to watch it. It really is to see people that cannot think one original thought for themselves. It's very sad. Okay, so the next thing is we're going to talk about Alexander Solzhenitsyn. If you've never read his books, you probably would do well to enlighten yourself with Solzhenitsyn. He wrote against the communist takeover in Russia. But what we're going to talk about here is the viewpoint of Alexander on an equity-based system. And that's what we're trying to move into, or that's the idea, is forced equity. Okay. And this is Solzhenitsyn's belief and quote that he wrote sardonically, which means tongue-in-cheek, mocking, cynically, right? That's what sardonically means. Solzhenitsyn wrote, "On the threshold of the classless society, we were at last capable of realizing the conflictless trial, a reflection of the absence of inner conflict in our social structure, in which not only the judge and the prosecutor, but also the defense lawyers and the defendants themselves would strive collectively to achieve their common purpose." And so that is what we're faced with if we allow this system of jurisprudence to just fade away, is the fact that nobody walks into a courtroom. The passive arbiter sits up there, unbiased, impartial, and the two sides present the evidence, right? And I'll give y'all an update on one of the next things that I have to do for my federal judge. I have to hit my federal judge with a judicial complaint. And the reason for that, he sent out an order last week, and the order was directed at the defendants. And he literally gave them a new argument in the order. Well, that's not an independent and passive arbiter. He just helped the other side. Now, this is a top 50 law firm in the United States. They need help against me. This is, but this is the reality, right? So this is how you keep them in line with black and white. He stepped outside his office. He decided that he was going to interject himself into our conflict and help the other side. Well, that's what you have the judicial canons for. And if people here have never read the judicial canons, each state has them. The federal judges have the judicial canons, and that's how they're supposed to operate. Just same thing with the lawyers. Lawyers have the professional rules of conduct. I've sent in 7 bar grievances so far against one of the lawyers that I'm dealing with. And the reason for that is he keeps lying. 16401 is one of their professional rules of conduct, truthfulness in statements to others. Well, I've caught him in 10 lies. Well, eventually the lie is going to unfold, because once you start lying, you're going to have to continue lying. That's what the foundation of lies, that house that's built on sand, right? It has no foundation. It shifts with the winds and the seas. So there is no lie in nature, right? So either it is or it isn't. If you have to protect yourself with lies, you really aren't, you have no protection at all. And that is our common law right to face our accuser, right? I have accused these sides of having no rule of law to implement mass mandates, vaccine mandates, or anything else. And they never did. So the only way they can defend themselves is through lies, obfuscation, and stonewalling.
So I wanted to make a point about what you just said. As all this, what I consider to be legal activity, rolled across our country, basically what had happened is people with power somewhere started to create what they were going to call a mandate. Basically, a place that was a corporation then told all the businesses how they were going to conduct themselves. And like a bunch of children in a room, very few of us stopped to say, wait a minute, you're a corporation, CDC. You're not a governing body. Because every time I went out in the world and I said, where's your authority for any of this? They all said the same thing, the CDC. And I'd look them in the eye and I would say, that's a corporation, not a governing body. Please show me the law that gives you the authority to enforce any of this. And they kept on what they were saying. No, the CDC. What Big Sib just said is a critical rule of thumb. If there is no law, there is no problem. I mean, would you state that differently?
No, it's a fact. So there can be no law that criminalizes in our natural state. It can't be, right?
There you go. There's no lie in nature, right?
That's right. And that's why we keep going back to this foundational. You have to have this foundation that you're not going to budge from, right? And so my design, your design, is to breathe in through our nose and breathe the death out, right? Life in, death out. That's just how it works. And so me and my natural state can't be criminalized. It's just the personal autonomy, my freedom of choice, it doesn't matter what your religion is, whatever. Like one guy asked me, what's your religion? Well, my religion's anti-masking. That's my belief. That's my inner held conviction, right?
And a good one it is.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter what it is. I just don't want to wear it. And so I have the personal ability, the freedom of conscience to make that choice. And just in the ipso facto, on the flip side, the person that believes that mask and wants to join that rite of initiation of Branch Covidians, they can wear it. But hey, for me, it's an instant sign that I have no ability to converse with this person right now. They're not at my level, at my state of consciousness yet. I pray that they get there, but most of the time, anybody that can't read or see a disclaimer is not ready for these higher-minded concepts. They're stuck in the groupthink hive mind mantra,
which they're still doing, by the way.
Yes.
The news the other night, and it came from Washington, D.C. Do you suppose where they're broadcasting this idea from has a mental effect on people? From Washington, D.C., the schools are demanding that if your child, and this is months off, everybody, so don't worry, but months off, if your child is not vaccinated, you will not be able to bring him to school. And by the way, this will be enforced. Well, excuse me, lady from Washington, D.C., could you please show me the law? And here, lady, I've got a better question. Are there any COVID laws that got passed? And if you can't answer yes, then what is going on in this world? Children have become in charge of the asylum, basically.
Well, if we go back to history, Crow, and we can watch the fall of a system, right? It always follows the same path. It follows demoralization. Okay, higher ideas are made fun of, mocked, and scoffed, right? And the people themselves become the Gestapo.
Yep.
Through ignorance, right, and won't disregard. They police themselves, and they do it ignorantly. And that's exactly what they did. They planted an idea with COVID. They primed us. They planted an idea that it was a super killer. So they created an omnipresent, omniscient God for the masses to worship, and they worshiped it.
Yep.
So, and this stuff, just like anything else, it doesn't have any basis in reality, right? Nobody can bring into the courtroom this living virus, this tyrannical deal. So it's just an abstract idea. And that's where the power is on the objective side of truth. Everybody has philosophical tenets that they align with. Mine are mine. They're not yours. You and I can share ideas, but my spiritual journey is not yours. But what we can agree on is that there's no lie in nature and that the objective truth does matter. It has to matter. Okay. Moving forward, our common law right to face each other as face our accuser is important, because what we're going to bring into the courtroom is objective fact, whether it's written contracts, implied contracts, whatever it is. Okay. An idea must eventually gets written on paper. The spoken word flies away. The written word remains. And what do I mean by that? Whatever idea that we have to form any association, any organization, anything that we want to do or contract with somebody else for the benefit of ourselves or our offspring is simply written down on paper. That's a private contract. Okay. Anything that works in your subjective thoughts that isn't written down, there's not going to be any trail for anybody to follow. That's why we write everything down. Because if it's just living in your mind, nobody else can follow it, because the mind can change. So we have to have this unbiased and impartial tribunal, which operates in theory to protect the truth. This is something worth fighting for. And one of the things that I've come to believe, and I'll state this because I've been in this a long time, Crow. I went down all the different rabbit holes, all the different trails, the UCC stuff and everything else. And then I got my butt whipped in court. And, I did the usual blame game. This whole system's corrupt and everything else, but I wasn't doing anything the correct way. When we started actually applying this knowledge that we're teaching now, and Dr. Graves' course was pivotal. His course is both philosophical and law. And you'll notice this, and I keep trying to explain this to people, that there's no separation of the philosophical tenets versus the law, because the spirit of the law is what is supposed to control the law. And that's the invisible principles behind what's written on paper, right? It's not written in the Constitution, but you have a right, what's called a penumbra doctrine, right? The right to privacy. Well, this is inherent in you and me. I shouldn't be snooping in your doggone window or in your bathroom while you're wanting your private time. This is logical deduction, right? So what we're going to skip to now is why this is worth fighting for, and then the horror stories that are coming out. I was involved in one very recently. It broke my heart. Okay. And I'm just going to give the synopsis of what went live on Alphonse's channel one afternoon. It was 9:00 thereabout. Guy gets on, help. My girlfriend's being arrested. So we start having a conversation with him. Lo and behold, she didn't go to court. And he says, well, we handed them all our papers. Well, it cued it as soon as he said this, it cued me in to ask the question, and I asked the question, by what papers did you turn in? And he goes, well, we handed them our state national documents, and we didn't have to go to court, and we did some right of execution or something. I can't remember exactly what he said. And I said, oh my goodness, man, your girlfriend's going to jail tonight. And it was heartbreaking in the sense because these people were taking advantage of by it's no different than predatory lending practices or anything else, right? There's scammers out there waiting to hear somebody in one of these chat rooms or on YouTube begging for help, and they'll take advantage of them. This has happened throughout history and everything. You're going to find these people. But one of the things is they're handing these people paperwork that these people have a belief is going to work, and it has no basis in reality. And it's heartbreaking to watch these as they transpire. And I want people to be mindful. Don't just buy into the easy way out. This area of expertise and knowledge is both going to grow you mentally, spiritually, and objectively. This is your part of your journey. It's part of my journey. It's part of your journey. It's part of all of our journeys. Okay. Reaching your higher mind and seeing the philosophical tenets of how this all applies to each of us. You recognize that this is this generation's fight, right? And I think this is a perpetual cyclical event that happens, right? We demoralize ourselves, and then we must fight back into freedom. But watching these horror stories of somebody selling you some papers or selling you an appeal, one of the things that really breaks my heart too, because I have to tell people, Brandon, give me some templates. Okay, I can give you an outline, a template, but my paperwork cannot be your paperwork. What do you mean? I'm just going to turn it's not the same case. It has not the same facts. Do you really, when I write something out, attached to that writing is what I truly believe, right? Not only is it what I truly believe, it's backed in black and white law. Okay. So it contains the spirit of the law, which is the principles for which it's written for. And then it has the black and white letter law. If you don't know what is in that paperwork and you just go loosely turn it in, it's going to work sometimes. But for the lady or man who's facing jail time, one lady took some of this paperwork in the family court, lost her kids. It's sad watching these things. Don't get sucked into these people looking to take advantage of you. You're going to find that Alphonse, Dr. Graves, Randy Kelton, Brett, all these people, James the Patriot, right? We're not going to do it for you. I'm going to make you go do the work. And there's a reason for that. You are responsible, not me. I'm morally accountable for Brandon. I'm personally responsible for Brandon. I cannot take that position for you. If I speak for you, I can't act for you, right? You have to do it. It's your work. So just don't jump in somewhere, beg for templates, and think they're going to save you. It's not. It's the knowledge. Knowledge is power. When you wield the sword of truth, okay, when you wield that sword of truth, you act on that truth. You are acting in power, love, and a sound mind. That's with right thinking, right application. It's all these ideas that are spiritually connected to all thought processes. So I'll turn the floor over to you, Crrow. These instances are really heartbreaking to watch.
If you get into a disagreement in the world, is some kind person just going to step forward and put on boxing gloves for you?
No.
It doesn't work that way. There really is no easy way out. And sometimes the success that one might find is not that difficult, but they have to comprehend. I'll make one point. On my website, under every single show, there are these little images of places that I support. Dr. Graves has a little yellow image, and on it, there's some books. It says, "No lawyer, no problem." I can't tell you, and Rose can't tell you how many people took that course. Some of them spent a weekend at it, and floods of emails saying, oh my word, my whole level of knowing has skyrocketed. I actually feel like I can start to stand on my own. I know something I didn't. And that comes down to knowing things. And I want to underscore what knowing things is such a problem in the common age. Do you know what one of the most powerful things in the world is? You'll never guess in a million years if you haven't thought this through. What is one of the most powerful things in the world? And it can't really be stopped except by another thing that looks just like it, slightly changed. It's a story. A story is one of the most powerful things you will ever encounter in this world, because once it is seen by a mind and taken on board by a mind, no one can go into that mind and pull that story back. What started 2020 for us? It was a story. Mm-hmm. They made up this invisible monster that could never be identified, and people latched onto that story. And you want to know the only thing that'll defeat that story? There's two things. a better story, which is usually nonsense, or knowledge, the truth, knowing. And when you begin to comprehend what we're saying, this is not a thing where you can just get a document from someone, change a couple commas and your name. It's just not that easy.
No, it isn't. And for anybody listening to this episode, I sent Rose a bunch of American jurisprudence deals to back up the ideas and case laws that we're about to discuss next. But one of your recent episodes, too, is the basis of how our curriculum has changed over the last 100 years. In the late 1800s, going into the early 1900s, every man, woman, and child who received an eighth grade education here in the United States was their own lawyer, their own banker, could read Latin and all these ideas, write promissory notes, execute wills, execute legal documents. And this information has just disappeared. And what that does, it compartmentalizes the information. It's just like the logical fallacy of me walking into a hospital and trusting a doctor that I don't know. Right? I don't know this guy. He might be choking himself in the closet doing weird things when he goes home. Well, how do I trust somebody I don't know with my life? Right? And the same thing with lawyers who are identified to protect the law, but really they pervert it. No different than teachers right now perverting schooling, right? It's the upside down and we have to write it.
Let's make the point. Are those lawyers enforcing law, or are they trying to enforce something else? Maybe we could call it corporate policy. What are they actually trying to do?
Well, and so it's one of the things in one of my motion to show cause, and we'll discuss it later. The attorney called it legal argumentation. I said, but that's not how it's written. Legal argumentation is to argue facts, right? That's what legal argumentation is, and concurring beliefs, not to outright lie and pervert the truth and justice. That's why Lady Justice is blind, right? And she's got the scales in her hands, right? She's blind. She just sees the truth. That's the only thing she's supposed to see, not the outward appearance, because the outward appearance is judging incorrectly. So truth does matter. Legal argumentation is the way that these people are now hiding behind is how they vilify the truth, right? It's a perversion. And of course, when people have done this for so long, they've gone to school and been taught that this legal argumentation is the right way. They've lost the spirit of the law. And I have yet to meet a lawyer outside of Dr. Graves that has any love at all for the truth. Not one. I have not met one yet, and I'm probably dealing with 17, maybe 18 lawyers at this current time with the different cases that I have going. And I've met two honest judges out of the 12 or 13 deals. That's a pretty bad percentage. But yet, when you get into this, what you're going to do is continually raise it up until an adult sees it somewhere. Okay? You are going to eventually find an adult, and that's what we're all looking for. The adult understands these things. So do not get sold this bag of state national passports, all this other stuff that gives you free reign. And I'm going to read directly from American jurisprudence with the case law right now. Persons are not exempt from regulatory statutes on the basis of a claim that they are free men and not 14th Amendment citizens with no obligation to obey state or federal law. An individual has no right to unilaterally withdraw from society, rejecting obligations to that body, while at the same time retaining the advantages of that society, advantages of which others have sacrificed part of their liberty. Donning the mantle of a sovereign human being and common law free man does not defeat a court's exercise of personal jurisdiction. Federal courts are without the power to decide questions that cannot affect the rights of litigants in the case before them. And what that means is your abstract ideas, your belief, walking into a courtroom where you're supposed to face your accuser and you have rights above that of your neighbor that exempt you totally from society is not going to work. And why? Well, let's play this out. Let's do a hypothetical scenario. Crrow's got an issue with me. We go to court. I walk into court, and now I've taken something from Crrow. I've inhibited his life, liberty, or property. I walk into that courtroom and I go, well, I'm a sovereign human being, not 14th Amendment citizen. You can't do any. Well, that's unequal to Crrow. See, I've raised myself above and given myself a title of nobility, and I'm a king in my own realm. And that's not the idea of this system. This system is for equality for all, but it must be fought for, not just given. So when you grasp that, you're not going to be in this realm of clown cuckoo land.
So let's handle why Dr. Graves' method actually works is because of the simple fact of following objective truth, which leads to admissible evidence on the record inside a court of law. And all Dr. Graves really pushes is just doing things the right way. And that's that.
This is an important thing. I can't tell you how many emails we received from people who went out and did Dr. Graves' course. Some of them knocked it out in just a weekend. And I know that sounds like a shortcut, but maybe waking up in the morning and going all day and getting so into this and knocking out the lion's share, that's one thing. But my point here is to a mind. What they said was, I had no idea. I feel so much better equipped. I now have a foundation to stand on. Again, there's a little yellow image that links you to Graves' courses. If you're serious about this, you have to know things. And, I don't know what you think, Brandon. Isn't Dr. Graves a fantastic place to start?
Oh, it's so, like I said, I've been at this for a long time, going through all the misinformation and disinformation, and about 16 years into this now. When I took Dr. Graves' course, the fog went away. It's just that simple.
There it is. That's what I've heard in email. Versions of that is what I have heard hundreds of times now.
Yeah. And so what it does is you laid it out. You said it, and Jason did too. It gives you a foundation onto which you're not going to move from, right? And that foundation is huge. It is so important to have it because we just simply aren't taught this. And you keep saying knowing things, right? Well, the nescient who has never had any information brought to them, not a scientia, which means no knowledge, right? You have no knowledge. You're not even ignorant of a thing because ignorance is usually willful. You don't want to know a thing, right? But we haven't even been brought this information at any point in time in our lives of how we say things like we have rights. I can ask 99.9% of the people out there, what are your rights? And they have no clue. So if you don't even know what a right is, how can you protect it?
So next, let's touch on hearsay. Hearsay is a statement other than one made by the declarant while testifying at the trial or hearing, offered in evidence to prove the truth of the matter asserted. Isn't it another way of saying that poppycock?
Yes, and it is, Jason. You're correct, right? And so your subjective ideas that you have aren't gonna cut it, right? So you have to have admissible evidence, right? That's why we teach people. Somebody comes to my group or comes to Alphonse's group. Can you please make a timeline of events in a simple Word document? And I ask people to do this. And the reason for that is once I see the timeline of events and you write it out, what you're going to see is what you have as evidence. What are the facts before this court? And once you do that, and it's not, well, I heard so-and-so say this over here. Well, that's not admissible evidence. That's third-hand information. So when you grasp this idea of hearsay, you'll also, let's join this to propaganda, right? Because this is one of the tools used in our modern society to push people to an idea, to accept it as true, is what Edward Bernays coined as propaganda and things of that nature. Anonymous sources have dictated to us and that's how the story starts off on Fox News, CNN News, or whatever. Well, that's just hearsay evidence. And people take it as truth, and there's no factual basis and reality behind it. There's no living man or woman attesting to the truth or validity of the statement, right? And that's what an affidavit is. It's an attestation under penalties and perjury of the truth of a statement. And that's why an affidavit is so powerful, and it's a powerful tool because you are saying something, you're attesting to it, you're attesting to the truth of it. So hearsay is used all over the place. It's propaganda in news and things of that nature.
and you need to grow up and learn how to recognize it. Go ahead, turn on Fox News and listen to the beginning of every sentence. Go ahead and turn on CNN. Turn on any damn thing you want that calls itself news, and you'll hear things like, well, many are saying, or we found a tweet that said, or could it be possible? Look at Ancient Aliens. Every single statement in that show is, could it be? Or is it possible? Or this group of people that's undefined suspect. It's all language that any adult should be able to see through in a moment. And this comes back to ideas.
Right.
What's one of the most powerful things in the world? A damn story. And what is a story? It's ideas. And by the way, when you start to move away from common law and get into more towards the law we have today, those are ideas. But what are those ideas based on? What everything in this world is based on? The truth of nature.
That's right.
Every single thing in this world, even the lies, can be run back to the truth of nature, because when your story is a lie, what are you avoiding? You're avoiding the truth that is nature. You're trying to make something else true that is not, which can't be done. Anyhow, go ahead, Jason. Ideas. It's a big deal.
All right, so this should cover the end of hour one. Ideas become patentable only through their expression and not the ideas themselves.
That's a big statement. And go ahead and include the next statement in that for us, because I want people in the first hour to have this American jurisprudence, Jason. Then I'll expound on it.
Laws of nature, natural or physical phenomena, and abstract ideas are not patentable. These items cover concepts that are part of the storehouse of knowledge of all people, free to all individuals, and reserved exclusively to none. Without an exception from patent eligibility for laws of nature, natural phenomena, and abstract ideas, there would be considerable danger that the grant of patents would tie up the use of basic tools of scientific and technological work and thereby inhibit future innovation premised upon them, which would be at odds with the very point of patents which exist to promote creation.
This is a huge, mega huge thing that became more important at exactly March of 2020. You cannot patent nature. Now, back when I was involved in plants, we saw the first companies come out to try to patent a bamboo that they had basically created in a test tube. But the problem was it was a replica. It was an exact replica. And they thought that because they had in vitroed it, that they could then fool everyone into thinking, we call this one morning breeze. No. But now think about what you were told with the inoculation. We are going to take your mRNA to update your DNA. Well, nature can't be patented, so your DNA cannot be patented. But what happens when you accept an offer and someone modifies it? That's not natural anymore. Anyhow, go ahead.
Yeah, and so we can take these ideas and we can see the reasoning behind commercialism, right, is to pervert nature and make everything sellable, right? So in order to do that, we must change it. And this is the whole design of our current corporate dictatorship, right, is to fleece everybody, put them on the hamster wheel. You work 24/7, and at the same time, we're going to sell you these concoction of pills that destroy your liver, kidneys, and endocrine system, and you spend your golden years of existence inside of a hospital, right, in constant need of something else to cover up this symptom and all these ideas. But this is the truth. This is what's written in American jurisprudence, backed up by case law, is these ideas that we have finally written on paper, that laws of nature are what is supposed to be running this system. And it's a beautiful thing. But how many people have read something like this? I've never seen it before until I started reading deeply into things like Clarence Thomas and other ideas written by judges that could actually dictate these ideas. Dr. Graves' class goes into the reasonable man doctrine, the assumption of risk of life. Right. You hear people, we're trying to keep you safe, and these other ideas. That's not your job to keep me safe. One of the things that's in Supreme Court ruling is that the police, the sheriffs, are under no obligation at all at any time to insert themselves into private affairs and keep anybody safe. That's a Supreme Court ruling. And why is that? Because we all assume the risk of life. When we walk out our doors and we go into life, we assume the risk of all things that happens. Nobody can keep me in a bubble 24/7 and keep me safe. These are doctrines that have existed since in my research since Greece, right? Ancient Greece and probably before ancient Rome. All these ideas have been here this whole time. We've just lost our way. We don't grasp this foundational truth that there is no lie in nature. And with that is what we are supposed to base our objective living on.
If you don't comprehend that there is no lie in nature, and to comprehend it, you must challenge it. You must say, somebody told me this thing. Now it's my job to try to rip a hole in it and logically work out if it's acceptable. When you do that thing, you will have received back a foundation that is stable for you to stand on. It's a bit like realizing NASA has lied to you. You are not spinning it faster than the speed of sound. And until you realize that, you're in a spin cycle. And everything you think about is coming from a place of error, because foundationally, what you think is correct about where you are is without a stable foundation, which is the design of these ideas. And as we wrap up hour 1 of 437, I'll say another thing. Did you know that back in the days of supposed knights and when they drive at each other jousting on a horse, they had to prove that they came from, I don't want to say a noble lineage, but an upper crust patrician lineage. That list was called a patent. You had to prove your patent name. Think about what we're saying here. Now think about people with titles. A person with real titles, noble titles, they are entitled people. What are all we? What we are is people that forgot. That's what we are currently. Not all of us have forgotten, but so many of us have forgotten that those that have not forgotten are surrounded by those that have. And there is the basis of the powerful story of every damn zombie movie you've ever seen. Here's a couple people running from all these zombies that don't even quite know what they're doing. What do you think all that's about? But Big Sib, please give out your contact information.
Well, you can find me on YouTube, The Big Sib, and you can find me on Telegram if you come in Alphonse's group, or if you contact Rose. Rose has permission to vet and allow people into my private Telegram group, and I keep it private to keep the spam out. It's too much for me to deal with. I work, I do this stuff on the side, and I have children, so I can't deal with the spammers 24/7. But my contact information for my email is Sibley, SIB as in boy, LEY, 97 at gmail.com. You can reach out to me. Please know I don't have any assistants. So if I get 200 messages in one day, and that's usually the average of it, if you don't hear from me in a week, please resend the message. I just missed it. So please be kind on that front. I am just one man operating what I do.
And please take it to heart what you were just told. Rose and I deal with this nonstop. Hundreds of emails a day. And so many of them are, could you please tell me what this means? Do you have a search engine? Do you have a dictionary? If you make contact, be an adult. Have a serious reason for making the contact. That's just common etiquette, or it should be. But anyhow, that brings hour 1 of episode 437 to a close. This is an important episode for those that are concerned with their rights. This is a roadmap on how to not blow it and get yourself into trouble. If you don't realize that the legal system will rain hellfire on you if it can, well, then you're missing the boat. But at the same time, if you comprehend your rights and comprehend what needs to be done, there is an ironclad system there that functions like a machine. And by the way, if you track it back far enough, it is, I don't want to say mimicking, it is reflecting in some human way the truths that are in nature, or it's trying to. But all constructs made by men are a pale shadow of what the Creator gave us, called the creation, to include the divine spark of life, which you were granted at the zygote, to include free will. That's a big one. If you don't use it, someone else will use theirs on you. And lastly, you have been made beneficiary of the creation. Anyhow, hour one is free to everybody at crow777radio.com, CRROW777radio.com. And I'd like to wish each and every one of you a happy, healthy, and higher-minded new era. We hope to see you over there for hour two. Cheers.
Belief is the enemy of knowing.
All right, man. Welcome back to hour two of episode 437 with Jason Lindgren and Brandon Sibley, known as Big Sib online and all the legal arenas. And I will say once again, this man has the respect of a lot of people that I respect, and therefore he has my respect. And I think I've said respect enough, but let's get into an idea about the importance of what this creation, or basically nature, gives us. There is no lie in nature. This is demonstrable. This is not a point that I would argue with someone. It would be a bit like someone coming up to me and trying to convince me that the sky is not blue. I won't have that argument. It is beyond being argued about in my mind. I'll smile, shake their hand, say, have a good day. There was an older form of natural science, which loosely gets defined as alchemy. Alchemy can be many, many, many different things. The reason that I respect certain definitions and usable attributes of this is for the following reason. There is no lie in nature, and nearly anything in nature through those old principles can be broken down provably into body, spirit, and soul. Now we're going to get into some ideas. And by the way, that's a direct line. That tells me that this way of thinking, or this natural science, is demonstrable one-to-one with nature. It is not overstepping the truths of nature. It is not refashioning or making up a story about nature. It is saying nature is real. There's no lie. It's the closest to reality we can come. To be perfectly clear, it can be divided into these three things over and over and over, proving what it is that it means. We're going to get into the idea of spirit. Now, this relates to what happened to us in 2020. Here, put this thing over your face. What they're blocking, what they're veiling, is what the Lord gave to you. Maybe I should say, the Creator gave to you as you came through the port of entry, as they will call it, but the birth canal, your breath. It was known half a century ago commonly that your breath is your spirit. So think about these provably true things that nature demonstrates to us as we hear the words used in legal reference or any other reference. Anyhow, welcome back, Jason.
Oh, and a scorcher of an afternoon.
All right, Big Sib, I'm going to have Jason jump in and we're going to get into some spirit here.
The paper lives because it is the idea or spirit behind the letter that gives the life. When we write our ideas down on paper, there must be objective truth attached to the idea, or it has no effect or basis in what we deem as reality.
Yeah, and let's discuss this, because now we're getting into what is called the spirit of the law. Now, I'll bring one biblical reference in here for people to identify and grasp what I'm about to say here. Who also hath made us able ministers of the New Testament, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter killeth, but the Spirit giveth life. So that idea that we write down on paper has principle based in spirit, right? It started within, and it moves to the without, the expression. And as above, so below, as in the intellect, so in the material realm, from the east to the west. All these ideas are spiritually backed, but we can see them and how they transpire. Everything begins as mind. The thought is formed, the seed is planted, and then we execute it in paper, right? So you're gonna give this document life. It's part of you, and that's what we do. This is how reality works. And so when we write these ideas down on paper, we correctly apply our knowledge and our idea, the spirit behind the idea is what is very important as we move forward. And this is why we must move forward with right thinking, right application, and with the idea of wisdom, which is the correct application of the knowledge that we have. We just don't know what we don't know. And our biggest adversary in this world is you can go look in the mirror and see who it is. It's not anybody else. You have to overcome your incorrect and illogical and unreasonable thought processes. We must apply correctly and use the tools to discipline our faculties of mind. Now, this is represented all over the place with the number 12, right? You got 12 faculties of mind. You must discipline the disciples in the upper room to reach what is called discernment. And that's a huge point in our adversarial system, because if you use this thought processes, you're going to win most of the time. Listen, folks, not everybody that we come into contact with is going to have this line of thinking. Matter of fact, in our current predicament, most of the people that we come into contact with is like the allegory that Crrow laid out earlier with the zombies, right? They're not thinking for themselves. There's an idea planted within them that is their religious belief, and they are following the cult of initiation, their rites of initiation, right? That's what it all is. And the idea itself is living within them, and false ideas you need to protect yourself from. And that's the purpose of this episode.
So there's big ideas here, and I'm going to try to underscore what was given by Jason in the first sentence. The paper lives because it is the idea or the spirit behind the letter that gives it life. There have been plenty of cultures where if something was written down, like Tibet is a good example, those letters, those words were sacred. They were not taking their newspaper to use for kitty litter. That would have been the antithesis of how they viewed their language in those letters. Let me try to draw an example without embarrassing myself. I believe it is John 1, the non-synoptic gospel of the New Testament, that opens with words something like this. In the beginning, there was the Word, and the Word was with God. Now come back to what was just said, because the paper lives because the idea or the spirit or the letter or the word gives it life. Do you see how far afield we've come? Now let's talk about a handheld device for 2 seconds. If I'm writing letters and words in there, is there any spirit? I would suggest to you that not in the same ballpark. And what's happening is synthetic ideas that have no force because they cannot be proven out by nature are creating a synthetic world. And what Big Sib is bringing is a way to pull you back to nature where there is no lie, to a world that is close to reality as we can get. Anyhow, would you add anything to that?
No, I think you explained it perfectly. And we have to have logic and reason. I think we talked about it in the last episode, the difference between the rational mind and the conceptual mind, right? When you can see these ideas and you can correctly apply them, then you're going to be levels above most of the people that you interact with daily. It's just a fact. It's gonna be there. But if you apply these concepts that I'm laying, which is what the word logos means, by the way, the original translation from Greek to the quotation that you did in John 1:1, it means concept.
There it is. I just ordered a Hebrew Bible in English because I had heard people like Fortune talk so much about where the translation that we accept is not the translation that once was. And in the book of Genesis, here's an idea for you. It's not in the beginning, it's in any beginning. Mm-hmm. And these minor details fascinate me endlessly because with the single change of a word to any, a whole new door of knowing is opened up. It's all you, Jason.
Our adversarial system of civil justice is premised on the search for truth.
Yeah, and so for people that read their Bible, if you go back to Pontius Pilate, and Pontius Pilate goes, what is truth, right? The normal man has no idea of truth, what it is, what it means. So in our application, what we do is facts and evidence. This is the beauty of this idea that there's no lie in nature, right? Logic and reason can correctly reduce down using these tools right thinking. We know inherently that honor, integrity, and truth are attributes that we should strive for. Instinctively, my sons and I'll just give this little synopsis of an event recently. My boys are 6 and 8, right? My son, the 6-year-old, decided to lie to me a couple weeks ago, and I had to discipline him. And then I made him explain to me why he lied. I caught him in the lie because it was unnatural to him. You'll see the mind shift when it starts lying, unless they're in a narcissistic behavior and they have no conscience left, of course. But either way, I didn't force him. I said, explain to me why you lied, son. Well, I didn't want you to get upset at me. And this is the ease of application that we see, that instead of facing the truth of a situation, we go into what's called self-deceit. Don't do that. Let the truth be your guide. Alter your perception of reality to fit the truth, not your indoctrinated or institutionalized view of religion, but the ideas and the concept that forms all basis of all religions. And I don't care where you go. If you grasp the concept, I can go read the Wahi Guru stuff out of the Sanskrit. I can go read anything I want. My favorite is the Bible, because I see the idea behind the story, right? It's written in story form, but I see the idea and the concept in Genesis, right? I understand what waters means. I understand the allegories and the representations that are used to convert an idea, right? I understand the parable, so I like that. But I go see the idea in anything. Let truth be your guide. Let truth be what you stand upon. And once truth is revealed to you in all its forms, you must alter your perception of reality to fit the truth.
All right. So here's an idea before Jason picks up again. These are big ideas. What is precedence? And if I asked, what is the ultimate form of precedence? Think about it for a moment. What is that thing that precedes everything? That's nature. That's the creation. There is your ultimate precedence. But if we pull up into human concerns, and this is maybe a more immediate precedence, we also know, if we have taken the time to think about it, that the mind precedes all reality. When we begin to break these ideas down using the creation as our measuring stick, because we are certain there is no falsehood, no beguilement, no camouflage. It is what it is. The sun will rise tomorrow at the exact moment it needs to. And by the way, that tree is going to keep growing as long as it's alive. So these are ideas that have to do with what we're about to address.
Truth is very much a subjective idea, unless it is backed by what we call precedents.
Yeah, and this is facts and evidence, right? That's what bases our rules upon, right? Facts and evidence. That's why propaganda is so bad. That's why hearsay is not allowed in court. And one of the circular arguments and duplicitous arguments that I'm up against in multiple cases right now is my adversary inside this courtroom is the lawyers, right? Who have no firsthand knowledge, are speaking with forked tongues, and want to argue two sides of one issue. And they do this with wording like this, and in the alternative. Well, that's not how this system is supposed to operate. First and foremost, I have a position. If you're arguing two different sides, what position are you standing in? And this has become the norm, right, in our society, where we do this forked tongue talk. But that's not. We can't allow this. We can't allow it in our conversations. I don't allow it in my day-to-day interactions with people. We have to have a foundation that we stand upon, and it's going to be in this particular realm. Now, guys, I have philosophical tenets that I apply to my daily life. That's mine, okay? I don't deviate from them. And once you have that bedrock foundation that you don't deviate from, you'll see the spirit of the law. And what is lost upon most of the people that I come into contact with in this arena, they don't have that. They don't get the basis of why everything is written the way it is. And they're Pontius Pilate over there. What is truth? and they're completely ignorant of what Crrow just laid out from you. And in the Bible, it's called, as you sow, so shall you reap. The seed that is planted, the idea that is formed will be expressed. It goes mind, idea, expression. And so when we write these things down on paper, we're giving life to the idea. And this is a beautiful concept. Once you grasp the totality of it, you'll change all kinds of things. Your mental conversations will shift. You'll not be the negative Nancy that sits there and focuses on the destructive thought patterns. What you'll do is move into the constructive thought patterns, right? You won't be ruled by your subconscious that is in disarray anymore. And that's everybody can apply this. You know this. Each of you experience this. That's when the subconscious is in control of the conscious mind. That's when you can't have a single thought and meditate on that thought. The subconscious comes back in with what you did to little Jerry on the school bus 20 years ago, and it haunts you. But either way, that's a little deviation. Sorry about that tangent. But we have to have these ideas. We have to assimilate them into our core systems of belief and then apply them correctly.
There's another idea that I guess I'd like to express here. Quite often we're faced with things when we haven't grown enough spiritually to figure out how to get the measuring rod from nature to try to assess sometimes very complex ideas. But after that time is over, you have the benefit of looking backwards at it. You know what they say about looking back, it's 20/20 vision. So the cliche goes. Paracelsus said something like, no poisonous tree is so hidden as to be able to hide the fruit. In other words, the fruit's poison, the tree's poison. That can't be hidden. People can lie to you, but the truth is the fruit's going to tell you what the tree were. This is my point. People went in and put on the mask in 2020 when they were told to do so. They did all these things, but now we're in a different place. This is a chance to grow, like the tree. Look backwards, what kind of fruit was produced. Do you suppose anybody could tell you that fruit wasn't poison from all those actions? And that gives you a benchmark that maybe you couldn't figure out back then, but you sure as heck can figure it out now if you're being honest with yourself. Anyhow, that's just an idea.
As logic and reason are pushed out of our society, less and less people can correctly deduce what rights are and what right thinking actually pertains.
And I'll give this assignment to everybody that's in the second hour of Crrow's show. Write down what you think a right is and what your rights are. And I guarantee you're going to be missing half of what they actually pertain to. Things like the right to privacy, all these ideas that are written on paper that have just kind of disappeared, right? The right to think and act independently of another, the freedom of conscience. And all these things are written down. And if you can't do that, if you can't name them, if you can't identify that you are endowed from birth from your creator with these unalienable rights, and you can't identify what those rights are, you can't protect them. So take this time to actually write it out and seek it out. What is a right? And once you assimilate that knowledge into your system, you'll start thinking correctly in how to apply and assert your rights effectively. And it's very important as we move forward that we'll go back to the patentable ideas, right? That these ideas are for us all. They're the laws of nature. You're right. They apply to us all. That's why it's written the way it is. The Constitution is not a document that grants anything to anybody. It's a document that secures these ideas that have been with us time immemorial, as far as I can go back. And you don't really know what time frame anything really existed. But the idea itself lives because it's written down and it continues forward in whatever form. Some forms it's stories, some forms it's philosophical thought, but nonetheless, these ideas last forever. They cannot be done away with. This is very important for people to grasp.
One of the things that I do, and this is nearly every day, is I try to lay out rules that I will live by. Typically, what I'm doing as I go outside to meditate or pray each day is I say, I will live compassionate. I will value all living things. and I will hold the creation sacred above all else because it is the only example of truth that never deviates. And I think of these simple things, and the reason it's like, and I can't quote the Bible, there's an idea of putting on the armor of God in the Bible. This is that. If you're living correctly, if you're thinking correctly, you begin to insulate yourself from the false nature of this reality. It's just that things got a lot worse recently. It is openly spiritual warfare now. The idea is you don't want to grow your own food in the creation. You don't want to do anything with the creation. That requires work. So here's a supermarket, and here's some air conditioning. Here's a car, but can you make any of these things? Do you have control of any of these things? Well, guess what? There's a new cost. Yeah, it's going to cost you $9 for this thing you want from the supermarket, but now you need to veil your spirit as you give us the $9. And by the way, pretty soon we're going to scan you. Did you get the shot we're requiring? And this right thinking, right acting is a huge, huge deal. It begins to protect you when you begin to think and live appropriately. And the beauty is every single person listening can sit down and think, what is important, say 3 tenets that I should live my life by, and just do that and stick to it. And when you realize more, upgrade it. I think these are important ideas because so many people who do the wrong thing don't recognize the wrong thing because they're doing the wrong thing.
Agree wholeheartedly.
Invisible ideas are protected by the adversarial system, and these include religion, the right to think and act independently of anyone else. Religion is any inner held conviction that moves a person to act. Everyone has a religion. Everyone. Freedom of expression, as long as it doesn't injure someone else's life, liberty, or property. And freedom of speech, same as above, etc.
And so, we have this industrialized view of religion today where it's this cookie cutter, like a Stepford Wives view. But it doesn't matter if he's an atheist or if believes he's non-binary or whatever. That person's religion, their inner held conviction is what moves them to act. That's everybody. It doesn't matter who it is or what it is. They have a religion, okay? And most of the religions actually operating today are in the unnatural world. And what do I mean by that? They don't make any sense at all. They don't make any logical sense. The cult of what I'd call woke personalities and everything else is the counterculture movement now. Instead of being hip hop rap like I was captured by, our counterculture movement is a complete confusion of our natural roles. And this is very disconcerting to me because we can't even accept the factual, evidential, basic truth of reality that there are genders. And I don't want to deviate too far off into that, but you have to grasp these ideas. And the reason for that is because you have the right to think and act independently of anyone else. And I saw during the Covidius Maximus deal where everybody would send me, you have to identify your institutionalized religion, right? That was one of the things people were asking for. Like, you didn't have a religion unless you went to a church. This is asinine. This is not the truth. We have the right to freedom of conscience, and that means to choose the right or wrong of a situation. And this is done correctly by right thinking and right acting and basing your life on these tenets that you don't move from: minds, honor, integrity, and truth. All right. That's tenets that I work with every day. And I don't lie to myself. I refuse to lie to myself. I just will not do it. I must alter myself, my perception of reality to fit the truth. And when you do that, you'll come to this place where you grasp that I'm going to cause no harm to my neighbor, his life, his liberty, or his property. I'm just not going to do it. It's not going to happen. And you have every right in the world to think as illogical and as unreasonably as you want to, as long as you don't hurt my life, liberty, or property.
Oh, these are huge ideas. I used to say a lot, and I kind of backed off it. And the reason I backed off it is because I know people who identify with a certain religion who are some of the most decent, strong-souled people I've ever met. So I don't say it as much as I used to, but I used to say all the time, religion is spirituality gone wrong. And this is exemplified in what we saw in COVID. Well, you tell me, are you a Baptist? What are you? Because if you can't show me, then we don't recognize that you have any spirituality at all. This is a bit like saying, hey, man, are you a Republican or a Democrat? Because I want to figure out if I can get along with you. These are constructs that are used for a manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the gender ideas, and right now it is very difficult to say anything about gender because we all know what that agenda is about and how hard the punch in the nose you're going to get if they aim at you. Here's the thing. There is no lie in nature. You know what nature has shown me? This world perpetuates itself, and it does it through gender for most of the living things. A female meets a male, makes a child. This idea is represented in the religions, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. This idea is represented in legal ideas when we look at things like a trust. Well, there's a grantor, there's a beneficiary, and there's a trustee. These things are exemplified in geometry, which is also mathematically provable. I have a dot. What do I have? I have a dot. I'd like more than a dot. So I have 2 dots. What do I have? I have 2 dots on a line. Now, when I get to that magical 3, now we're cooking with oil. We've got a shape. We can build things. Look, I've got a triangle. I've got the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. I have a male and a female that can have an offspring. I have a trust. Now I can have something. And now when you look back at what the gender manipulation and everything that goes on with it, you realize that it's not about insulting anybody. What it's about is pulling you away from the truth of nature, because we have, in fact, entered the time where the people running this show have had to face they cannot be gods of this creation. They can't do it. It is not possibly done by them. They cannot make a fish from scratch. They cannot make an oak seed that will build an oak tree from scratch. They can't do it. So what did they do? They built artificial constructs. They brought you a car. They brought you a grocery store that has every fruit, every season, free of nature's binds, because everyone knows you only get oranges when oranges are ripe. They built all this artificial construct, and now they are gods of that system, because now they can say, oh, you don't want to be part of the truth that is nature. You want to be part of our artificial construct because you're really appreciating my air conditioning and this cool car we built that you can't build by yourself. Well, here's the additional cost to come join our artificial club. And this is exemplified through the cell phone. As a matter of fact, the bars of this prison will be built on a cell phone. And I think it's important to lay that all out, because when we say things about gender, people lose their damn minds and they want to act like someone's been insulted. That's not what's going on here. The Place There Is No Lie showed me how life exists here. A male and a female, in most cases, not every case, have offspring. Then that offspring does the same thing. Geometry proved to me a dot gets me not much, 2 dots gets me a little, but man, when I get 3 dots, I can build some stuff. And almost all this law that we have been talking about, I could correspond to a trust. Let's talk about that for a minute. When I realized all at once that so much of what's going on here in courtrooms and other things could be equated or allegorized using the trust idea, is there anything you could add about that, Brandon?
Well, you have to understand what a trust is, right? And again, that goes back to what I wrote previously. The paper lives because of his idea or spirit behind it. And so Congress can pass no law that inhibits the duties and obligations of a contract. So, and what we do, I've got a trust. I put all my stuff in it. But this particular area that we're talking about in protecting your trust and your life, liberty, and property moves into the correct application of it. So when you have these ideas that you've written out on paper, right, it keeps your stuff. So one lady, I'll just talk about one lady that I'm executing her husband's will that he died, and the lawyers want a piece of the trust, but they can't get it. Everything that he owned that was in the trust, they can't touch. They just can't do it because she's the beneficiary of that. No one else is written into that idea. And in order for them to break that trust open, right, in court, there must be somebody that has what's called standing. Okay. That means directly affected by it. And that's usually an offspring or beneficiary or whatever. And the same thing goes with a will. The difference between a last will and testament and a trust is that most last wills and testaments go to what is called probate, and the state becomes the administrator of that will. That's not what a perpetual living irrevocable trust does. So these ideas continue to be parlayed towards us, right? When you go to the courtroom and you're in there and it's an adversarial system, you must apply the facts and evidence to move forward. This is the beauty of how the system was built, and why the more I research it, Crrow, the more I research the foundation. And even today, I go back 10 years ago, and one of the destructive forces moving forward was that all the founding fathers were Satanists, right? And then you go back and read Thomas Jefferson's works. You go back and actually read what these people actually believed in. You go, these people had right thinking. They had good logical deductions, right? They understood that a monarchy was not a system good for us. Was what we broke away from King George. You go read the Declaration of Independence. Every man has the right to life, liberty, and property, and the right to not be taxed, just to exist, right? And somehow we've lost the spirit of these ideas over the course of time. And of course, we're back into that cyclical nature where breaking free, I think it's called the Tytler cycle. Tytler shows that we go through this continual cycle of spiritual revival, which leads back to freedom. And we are the start of that. And it's great to be on this side of it. And it's great to see so many people correctly applying this knowledge and moving forward and protecting themselves, but also teaching it to their offspring, because this is how the next generation can multiply.
So before we start discussing the current trajectory of some of your personal cases that you're involved with, I'll share with one big idea. When I started to read a few books about trusts, they basically showed that nature is the basis for this idea. And when it becomes into the man-made realm, the replica or the man-made, call it a construct if you want, but trying to base on what nature shows is true. In a trust, you have a grantor. And as far as I know, anyone who creates a thing is the owner of that thing. So you might equate that with the grantor. And there's a beneficiary who the word tells you they benefit. Then there's the trustee. And when I brought it into a court setting, I realized, well, would the judge be the grantor? Typically, is the prosecutor or the person against me the beneficiary? And typically, am I the trustee? And what I began to realize is I thought about the whole situation differently, because whoever is the trustee is getting the pointy end of that stick. They have all the responsibility and really none of the benefits. And so when I began to frame my mind in a simpler way, I began to appreciate the power of the knowledge that you can attain to get ready for a situation like that. But if you don't have anything to add, let's get into your current things you're involved with and the trajectory they are taking.
This next story is a beautiful story. It's my dad's will caveat in North Carolina. So we got to the point. I wrote all the requests for admissions. I wrote everything for my dad, and last time we had recused the lawyer from the case, and Dad finally went to court. Got to the point where depositions were needed to be taken, and I went out and shopped for a lawyer for my dad, and we finally found one that I felt would do at least a decent job. Anyway, in one of the requests for admissions that the opposing side sent, the first question is like this obligatory question that all lawyers ask: who is assisting you in filling out this paperwork, or whatever it was? Well, I had a moment there because I was writing this all for my stepmother, where I sat down and the thought crossed my mind, Crrow, to actually lie. And I said, no, I'm not gonna be a part of any lie. So when I filled out the request for admissions, I wrote the truth. And the truth was that I, Brandon Sibley, acting as special counsel for my loved ones, receiving no payment or anything of that nature, am doing this out of the goodness and kindness of my heart. Okay, so we're going to jump forward. The opposing lawyers, the new ones, have attached themselves to that one idea. And that's when my dad went to court. That's the only thing they were concerned with, because I had caught the attorneys lying. I had caught my great stepmother lying. She lied on her affidavits. Anyway, lies everywhere. Well, they go to court, and they're sitting there in court, and the opposing attorney stands up, and she goes, the first thing that's brought onto the record, she states to the judge, we wish that you would, we ask you to issue a warrant for Brandon Albert Sibley for practicing law. And the judge goes, do you have any proof that Brandon Sibley was paid? And she goes, no. He flips the pages. Now, the reason why I'm telling this story here, what if this was a bad judge? Well, he couldn't issue a warrant anyway, because there's no standing. There's no admittance of crime that I had committed. But he flips the paperwork to the request for admissions, and he goes, counsel, it says right here that he's special counsel for his loved ones. Overruled. Move on.
No commerce going on there.
That's right. That's right. To practice law is to operate under the state's guidance. Each state has their own bar, right? And it's to actually go out there and take money from people. There is no criminalization. There cannot be any criminalization of good behavior, right? This is the upside down world where we think that doing something righteous and good for somebody else's benefit who doesn't have the knowledge to correctly write and plead effectively, that is not what our courts are originally designed to do. Our courts are designed to take the facts. The judge is an independent arbitrator of reading those facts as presented and should correctly apply the black and white letter written law. And when he reads that out to counsel, the counsel gets mad, and my great stepmother leaves the courtroom. And because their whole case revolved around me helping my stepmother.
But what does that say about the experts in the legal system, those lawyers? What does that say about them?
It goes back to what I've talked about earlier, where these people are so wrapped into and so used to lying and perverting the truth that they have this protected realm that nobody can do their job. And what I'm noticing as I move forward, Crrow, as a pro se, a lot of people don't respect you until you bam them upside the head. And then they go, now they're worried. And what you'll find out is that most people believe that all of us pro ses are coming into the court with the nonsensical ideas, as previously mentioned in hour one, which is that we're not 14th Amendment citizens and all this other stuff that separates the jurisdiction and everything else. But jurisdiction is a very simple idea. It's not complicated. It's not any special deal, jurisdiction, right? Justice in the correct place. So you have subject matter jurisdiction, and that's the ability of a court to hear a matter. Territorial is being one of the jurisdictions that is being misappropriately applied right now, because all our local kangaroo courts are running as businesses, and they've been running that way for a very long time. If you go to your local courthouse and you ask the clerk questions regarding anything, you're going to be met with a blank stare. Nobody's asked us that question before. And yes, that's a problem. Then you have in personam jurisdiction, right? And that's personal jurisdiction. But these ideas are wonderful tools to move forward. When you correctly apply this knowledge, you're going to eventually meet an adult. And that's what we're looking for. This judge had actually read all the paperwork. I had written the truth. I didn't lie. That meant to me, and this judge also, that the truth was more important than anything else. We just want the truth. And so this stuff that we are teaching, and we're teaching on higher levels, is vitally important as we move forward. And I'll talk about move into the next part of this too. Gary and I own a tow truck company now.
Before you get into the tow, let me ask you a question before you open up the next one. Is it your view that the old idea that if you show up in court and you argue, that you are no longer acting in honor? Do you have a point of view on that?
No, we are there to argue, but that's the purpose of it, right? Is if you write the truth You have the facts and the evidence, right? And you go into that court system, the judge is supposed to be independent. That's it. He's supposed to listen to the two sides' viewpoints. And right, there's sometimes it's very intricately detailed, like two corporations going against each other for contract, things of that nature. But most of the time, when dealing with our situation, it's very, most of the stuff that you're going to put forward, we're all going to put forward, like most people with family law stuff. The fact is that the natural law states that the parents have freedom with their children, right? The mother and father have 50%. These ideas are written down. But yes, we are going to argue, but you're not going to argue with the judge. That's it. You're not in a fight with the courthouse. If you use these tools correctly, right, you get to the adults, they're going to have to rule by the law. That's it. And you're going to corner them with the law. You're going to corner them with the professional rules of conduct. You're going to corner them with the judicial canons that they're supposed to be, which the first three always state in the judicial canons for every state and federally, that they have to be unbiased and impartial. That's it. They have to be unbiased and impartial.
So let me ask you another question. Everything that we have talked about here today is true as long as you are within that jurisdiction. Is that correct?
Yeah. And so if you have a case that improper venue, an improper venue means it doesn't have subject matter jurisdiction. Okay. Subject matter means the ability of a court to hear an issue. That's what it means. That's the simplicity of it. I cannot go to this local kangaroo court down here, right here in Hammond or wherever else, and go plead my constitutional rights. Constitutionally secured rights is the proper way to say that. The court has not the authority to hear it, and that's the problem most people find themselves in. They're in these lower courts, and they're going, "Well, my rights weren't applied there." That's because they don't exist there. You have to go to a court of competent jurisdiction, the proper venue to hear the matter. And we have so many great, and I'll just give another one too. A guy won $19,000 last week in our groups applying these principles, right? And we have every day, usually once or twice a day, somebody winning. And that's good. That's good, because what does winning build towards? It builds towards confidence. It doesn't matter how small or how great it is. Your first win applying these is going to build confidence for you to move forward.
David's getting bigger and Goliath is getting smaller in the mind, and that's a big deal.
Oh, it's a huge deal, Crrow. It is. And so when we first start out on this deal, you're looking at Goliath and you're going, oh my God. And you're in that negative mindset, right? There's no way we can do this. Each little cast of that stone, right? You become stronger and stronger. And you realize that Goliath himself is just a figment of your own imagination.
And mind precedes all. So what you're thinking going into it has a bearing on the outcome.
It is. So if you cannot foresee, that's sagacity, right? Sagacity of mind. If you can't foresee and have the proper foresight to see a win, you're not going to win ever, because mind follows the idea and it's going to be expressed. So you can't live in the negative Nancy perpetual state of despair, because you're just going to continually build on those negative concepts within your mind. And it eventually leads to psychological conditions like depression and things of that nature. And really, it all started in mind.
These are key points. People should know. So much of what I see pulled off in the world through information systems, which is our key downfall in this era, by the way, information systems, how the internet has been co-opted and how we use it because we're not grown up enough to do better, because we watch news, because we like movies, because we watch television. These are all information systems. But what you've got to realize is people think that when I have thought or I am thinking, that it has no, beyond my ability to perceive what I am thinking, it has no affect on the world. It's not true. A thought can be measured. A thought is energy. The difference, have you ever walked into a room where you're all in a good mood and you walk in and all of a sudden, you know, something has happened? Everybody, there's like a black, wet blanket. The first thing out of your mouth is what happened. Well, how is it that you know that? a little bit of his expression, but you feel the energy plummet. What's doing that? That's emotions. Those are thoughts. And these are key points, because this goes back to the more kind of occulted idea of manifesting your own reality. Does it make a difference to a person to go into the world every day saying, I am in such a great place. I'm going to conquer everything I do today. I'm going to win. Is there any subjective difference between negative Nancy going out and saying, man, I'm not feeling so hot today. I just wish I could go back to bed. I don't feel like I can accomplish anything. And this is the whole point. This is a key part of what these courtrooms and other things are doing to you. You're this little David walking in. There's Goliath. He's 20 feet tall. What hope do you have? By the way, the person that went in front of you got his butt handed to him. And by the way, you've got to comprehend how the power and the spell actually gets propagated out to the society. Anyhow, that's kind of a sidebar.
Well, and it's a good sidebar, though, because where does your confidence really come from? And it comes from a strong knowledge base, right? And we just don't know what we don't know. And ignorance is always going to succumb to somebody else exerting some type of force over them. And so that's the zombie movies. Again, there's your allegorical representation of just going along to get along, or the immediate response that you get from most people that are operating in the system right now. I'm just doing my job. Well, your job doesn't curtail inhibiting my freedom of expression, my freedom of conscience, nor my life, my liberty and property, nor my personal autonomy. Show me in your job description that states that that's your job. What do you mean? Exactly. It's not your job to do those things. But we have a society built and predicated on right now the ineffectiveness of humans in their lower mindset. And that is the path of least resistance. That means to go along, to get along. And that's illogical and unreasonable thinking. And it is not helpful to any of us.
Well, I've been thinking about this the whole show so far. Have you noticed that people in general are becoming more aware of these things in an accurate manner, since you do deal with the public a lot?
Yes. Yes, I have seen a resurgence in this. It's the logical path forward. As more minds become enlightened, it's going to spread like wildfire, and consciousness does shift reality, right? And it's one of those things that we can talk on the spiritual level, right? This is why so much misinformation and disinformation exist. First off, within this realm, is to always perpetuate losing cases and say there's no justice anywhere in the world. And so, but once we move past that illogical and unreasonable thought processes, and you start having thousands of people win and apply this knowledge correctly, well, guess what? That spreads like wildfire. So there's no stopping this shift forward. There's going to be issues along the way, of course, but there's no way to stop it. It is gaining traction. And the one thing I do dislike or I hate for Dr. Graves is that he's finally 80 years old, and the thing that he has fought for 50 years is finally taken off. And I hope he's here to watch it truly manifest into reality. But yes, this thing is taken off. People are taking this information, getting rid of the mythology that surrounds everything. And that's why you see the end of COVID happening so fastly. Listen, COVID was meant to shift us into a straight communist society. That's my hypothetical, subjective belief, that we were going to shift from this great system of jurisprudence and go into forced equality.
I agree.
Thank goodness it did not happen. And it's because of little people. It's not because of it's because of the Alphonses. It's because of people who just said no and just refused to comply, and then correctly learn the right knowledge to push forward.
I would point out that we have 9 of the 10 tenets of communism, and we've been living with them for a long, 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 long time.
Well, and yes, and you can see the cultural Marxism, right? We see it. If you read anything on communism, you understand that the demoralization of a society is first and foremost. And the reason for that is because a demoralized society is an unnatural society. They don't have any tenets that they stand on. So we have no integrity towards each other. We have no respect towards your life, your liberty, your property. Everything is group think, hive mind think, and there's no independent thought processes going on. It's real sad to watch, but if you watch the cyclical nature, or if you study the cyclical nature, you can see it, and it's playing out right now in things like Florida, where they're doing. Of course, this is political theater too. You have to grasp that. But even in schools, there's thousands of people in our groups now going up against the school boards. They're sick of this critical race theories and all these other theories. Well, guess what's going to happen when people recognize that theories are simply ideas that can never be proven? Well, you're going to have a destruction of the whole theoretical mindset, theoretical theories that are taught all throughout school. So this is the unraveling of the onion, so to speak.
The gravity of the situation will be lost because there won't be any gravity, because in the end of the day, gravity is just a theory based on a theory, to make a pun, but it does underscore how foundational to this false kind of place we have landed. It's all based on false ideas, manipulation, and theories that are now treated as if they are gospel. And I made the gravity joke because that is treated as if it was a law, and yet it is not. Now, I will ask, how long has it been since it has not been a law? Decades and decades and decades.
It's right. Buoyancy and density, right?
There it is.
And we have to go back to nature. And again, all these ideas are going to unravel. My personal viewpoint and subjective belief is that we are at the beginning stages of it. And just like you saw, I think it was maybe last week or whatever, that the CDC had to come out and admit that unvaccinated people and their natural immunity work more efficiently than the vaccines. This type of stuff is going to initiate more people into and I see it just for simple matters. I stood up at my place of work and refused to mask or vaccinate, and wrote letters to my boss and to everyone else, everywhere else that I went. And now 2 years later, my boss, who owns the company, is having to go to physical therapy. And the reason for that is because he was told that he was vaccine injured. It injured his nerves. Well, guess what happens? That one guy now is questioning everything in reality the last 2 years. This is going to exponentially move faster and faster out of this bullcrap that was the religious cult of Branch Covidians and the Covidius Maximus, which is nothing but a religious idea planted in the minds, and the people revered and worship this God.
Let's take a minute to make a couple points. How did we get here? How did we get here? Is there any evidence of how we got here? Well, actually, I can point you all in a direction that everyone will love to go, because it has to do with going in and holding your mind, or another way of easily saying that is entertainment, to go in and hold your mind. That is the basis for culture in most of our world now, is entertainment, or much of the world. Go back and compare TV from Perry the Mason, then compare it to LA Law. Go back, compare Andy Griffith's show in Mayberry Rural Fire District, RFD, to SWAT, which was late 70s, early 80s. Go ahead and compare Barney Fife to a typical police officer in any major city today. How did that happen? I would submit to you that it was done through entertainment. Why? Because the first movie you see where someone's not looking like Barney Fife, it's exciting. And then some of the things they do are shocking. But then we see that 1,000 times. And then finally it happens in real life. You've been primed. You've had your mind gone into and held. And these are key points, because most of us turn on Netflix and say, I'm going to be entertained, never having the foggiest idea of what is actually going on or what that platform is there for. It has an agenda. And if you haven't recognized the difference in programming over the periods of time I've mentioned, you're kind of not catching on to how this is implemented, or one of the major avenues. What would you add?
Yeah, well, it goes back to seed time and harvest, which is the law of creation, right? So if I can plant, it's kind of like the movie Inception, right? If I can plant an idea, make you have faith in it, guess what's going to be expressed in reality? And it's going to continue going like this. This is so to combat false ideas, you must put right ideas in and then act on them. Right thinking, right acting is going to always yield good fruit, right? You continue eating fruit from a poisonous tree, you're going to get bad fruit. It's just that simple. So once you become aware of the indoctrination and programming, tune in to your scheduled programming, right? I mean, it's not like it was ever hidden that they were controlling the lies told through your vision, was implanting in the mind a belief in a concept. And so it continually goes like this. That's why propaganda is so effective, because a lie repeated often enough becomes the truth for that person. It alters their perception of reality. If you have conversations with normal, everyday today people, and I do on a continual basis, you'll see that their perception of reality is usually based on lies.
There's so many key points about modern society that when your mind gets to a point where it's not fooling you anymore, it starts to make such a huge difference. It's almost like I used to say, this isn't the information age. It was never the information age. And as time went on, I examined that, and that's not true. There were a few precious years where all of a sudden it felt like the world was your oyster. All this information you could get. It was a very short period of time. And then I started to say, well, what it provably is the age of dishonesty or deception. That's what era we're in. And as I began to go through right now, when I look at it, it is almost like the great enlightenment that people have echoed about is running parallel to the great winnowing. And that's why I don't feel like this is a done deal. We're going to a destination. There is no doubt. But what happens when the great winnowing knocks off, who knows, a third, half, however many it's going to knock off, and the great awakening on the other side runs parallel with it? Doesn't it mean that everybody on the other side are better equipped to deal with these kind of simplistic tools that we lost track of? Like, what's wrong with watching Andy Griffith or Perry Mason? Well, there's nothing wrong with it, but do you get what is going on and why it exists in the first place? Big ideas.
And they are. And I see we go back to a time past where people read instead of watched other things. And what you do, again, this goes back to the Orwell comment, the more you read, the higher your capacity of vocabulary is. And again, these are all tools. Language can be used to deceive as well as liberate. Okay. There's nothing wrong with being entertained for a second, but do you grasp that you're not going to allow the planting of ideas into your subconscious mind? Don't do it. So I simply just do not partake in much television. I don't partake in much of the tuning in. It's like the internet. The internet's a great tool. It is. It's a wonderful tool. But if you're going to sit there and watch cat videos all day, you're missing out on the quick and easy access to information that we have at our fingertips. And you just have to put everything in its correct placement and prospectively look at it and analyze each of these ideas that we continue to talk about.
Now, this is one of the big services Rose and Jason allow in my life. Believe it or not, yeah, I've got a degree in internet tech. I was like a big webmaster at one time. Now, I probably couldn't write a line of code that mattered comparatively where we are now, but I don't use online things. I dislike my cell phone. I mean, I use it for a call. I have no apps, all these things, but it's not easy to live that way. If Jason and Rose weren't there to write me an email, say, hey, did you catch this? Where would I be? I would have to go back and get into the mainstream of all these things that I kind of disdain. It's a catch-22.
It is.
In a weird way. As an example, I have a Twitter account. I'm following no one, and almost never do I post, almost never, there's an oxymoron. I very rarely do I post anything that isn't, hey man, there's a new episode on Crrow 777 Radio. I broke that rule yesterday. I put up a picture of a very old book, a version of The Last of the Mohicans. And I wrote, this is the last book my grandfather was given by his father in 1918. It came to my father in 1972. It came to me in 2022. But the whole reason that I did this was not to give someone eye candy. The whole reason I did this was for the last sentence. this book is a very timely read for our very near future. And so you can see what I'm trying to do, maybe not that effectively. I'm trying to not be entertaining. I'm trying to offer something that maybe has at least a little value to it. And the problem with so many of these systems is they're going the other way. Nope, take a selfie every 5 seconds, show me what's on your dinner plate, and do all these things that amount to exactly nothing and make that the foundation of your life. And that's a roundabout way of saying that's kind of how we are arriving at where we are now, because the mindset is not serious. The mindset is not adult. The mindset is, I'm going to take a picture of myself because I forgot what I look like. And by the way, look at this sweet burrito I'm about to eat.
Well, it is constant seeking of validation from others, right? And that means you're not secure in your own skin. And that seems to be one of the biggest issues with our society right now is a perpetually suspension of adolescence, right? And no one ever really grows up.
Perfect.
And of course, that's part of the design, right? Is that you stay in that childlike mind. That's why we have 70-year-old grandmothers out there twerking or whatever. But there's a resurgence on these. Just as bad as it is, we see the other side coming where people are going back into this correct application of knowledge. You can't be a child. You can't operate off of emotions at all time. Just because we saw this in the 80s and 90s when you went to school, how does it make you feel? Like, no, let's correctly apply this like I did with my son the other night. I said, you shouldn't feel that way because it's not true. I just want you to tell the truth at all times. That's it. Tell me the truth. You're not in trouble, right? Your feelings can be incorrect.
How would this be? What if we could get like 10,000 people to just try a hashtag for a day and say something like hashtag, does this matter?
Yeah.
Is there any hashtag, is this important, or it doesn't have any importance? I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be a part of this. I'm glad I awoke from my deadly dreams of good and evil, and I'm correctly making my eyes single, right? And so the light is going to shine in the darkness, and the darkness is not going to comprehend it at that point. But when you turn the light on and it starts spreading out, there's nothing they can do to quell that. There's absolutely nothing that can be done to stop this forward movement. And like you said, those that are winnowing are unfortunately going to be left behind. But that's neither my concern. It's like going out and finding people in these groups. One of the things that I have to do is remove myself from the Telegram group sometimes, because I'll find myself on that dopamine feedback loop where I continually am checking the Telegram group or updating with ideas, and I'll just remove myself from it for 3 or 4 days. And it's healthy to do that. It's healthy to catch yourself in your problems. Always correct yourself first. And if you focus on the self and you clean the inside, you're going to be able to effectively help those on the outside.
Let's start to wrap up, guys, but maybe here's an idea. To start to comprehend what your rights are and to start to correctly be able to do something to protect them, couldn't you equate that with being a grown-up?
Yes.
Like it was maybe 40 or 50 years ago?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. The other day, my wife said a thing to me, kind of like a jab at the dinner table. She says, I think you're a little too grown up. And the moment she said it, I started thinking, why wasn't that true 30 years ago? That was the immediate thought out of my head. And I've said on this show, I was like in my 30s or even maybe my early 40s when I was still asking myself, do I feel grown up? How can that be? And with all that I know now, I know exactly why it was, because I didn't think for myself. I was not a grown up. I watched television. I idolized music. All this information systems were my thinking. In other words, I didn't have any thinking. When I finally captured myself back and started to think for myself, slowly but surely, I began to grow up. But the problem here, which I have to be honest about, is if I'm going to be 60 before too long, and I'm now finally saying, well, I'm grown up, but I should have been here when I was 30, How far am I actually going to get by the time I'm 80 if I'm lucky enough to make it there? This is the era that we grew up in. Jason, I'll ask you, did you ever question yourself? Do I feel grown up? And if you did, how old were you?
49.
See what I'm saying? Our grandparents or my grandparents never had that thought. When we look back, and here's the other thing, it's completely mirrored. We're going through all the stuff in this house my grandparents built, and we keep finding all these little boxes with little old costume jewelry, trinkets, and class rings. They're all made at such a high level. You know why? Because adults made them. Adults that had pride in their job. Now, when we look at what we get, it's reflective of who we are. We get crap from China that's going to be broken in a month so we can get more crap from China. What's that Goo Goo Doll song? When everything's made to be broken, I just want you to know who I am. Truthful statement. But guys, Jason, Big Sib, any important ideas to get in before we wrap up?
No, I'll just touch on one other win that I'm directly involved in, and that's the default judgment on a tow truck company. Now, the tow truck company isn't who I'm after, and I'm going to go and negotiate with these people. And the reason for that is I don't really want to take the tow truck companies. They work for it. They're ignorant of what they were supposed to do in the law. And this crosses back over into the tenets I spoke of earlier. Have a basis of a foundation that you will not deviate from for any reason. And if you do that, you're going to be just fine moving forward. Let the truth be your guide. Let integrity rule you, and let your mind never deviate from it. And you're not going to have any issues. You're going to find resistance inside the courtrooms, against lawyers, against judges. We are at the beginning stages of unraveling the onion. So just know that resistance is good for you. Adversity is what refines men. Fire is the test of gold, adversity of strong men, and that includes women. So just know that moving forward, adversity, the furnace of affliction, is where you're going to get tested at. Move forward and correctly apply the knowledge that's being given away freely.
There is the thumbprint of an adult. I won, but it's not my goal to draw blood from this company that I just beat. As an adult, I will consider that they worked for this. And so what are my goals here? My goals were to correct a wrong, not to make them bankrupt or go for the nut kick as hard as I could. So many times in recent years, I've been in a position where I've considered and then decided not to do a thing. And everyone around me is saying, what is wrong with you? Go for it. Go for the juggler. Are you stupid? And I feel like I'm an alien sometimes because I know that's not the right thing. And I don't do it. But so many people around me have a strong opinion that I'm doing the wrong thing. Jason, any last thoughts?
So what's the current projects you're working on, and where are you taking this stuff next?
So I have the will caveat. I have the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians deal. We have the City of Central lawsuit. I've got some property tax things that I'm helping a lady in Texas with. And then I have the will caveat in Nevada. So the next phase, I'm actually writing a complaint right now against Wildlife and Fisheries and a breach of contract. This is the crazy thing. Once you actually know your rights, what you'll come to realize is that just about every interaction that you have with the zombies out there, they're violating your rights. And unfortunately, that's just the truth. Every time I turn around, there's a new cause of action that I have. I'm doing an injunctive relief against the federal judge here in Baton Rouge. It's the only courthouse we can't get into. They want a vaccine pass. I can go to New Orleans in the federal district courthouse. I can go to Mississippi, the federal district courthouse, but I can't go to the one here in Baton Rouge because they're wanting vaccine passports.
Hey, do you have more information on that? What they mean by a vaccine passport?
Well, yeah. So you can't come in without a mask in Baton Rouge unless you show that you've been vaccinated. Well, again, I can write on a piece of paper anything. It's asinine. There's no law that backs up this judge's order. So now I have to attack the marshals. We started that process. We've got the complaint written. And here, I'm one man. I've got 8 cases going right now. It takes continual work, but it's for a good cause. So I know that if I don't do it, who else is? And that's how I live my life. If not me, who? If not now, when?
Well, there was a lot here, and there's a lot of value here. And people who want to be serious, there are a lot of key points where they could begin to blow out the ideas in their mind. There are things that you can do for yourself. There are concepts that you can grasp. But more than anything, this all starts with ideas. And it all starts with stop lying. And why do you have to stop lying? Because nature doesn't lie. And if you want your rightful place in this world, your rightful foundation, you stand on a place where there is no lie, offering no lie. That's the idea of the armor of God. That's the idea of this little impenetrable bubble that keeps me out of so much trouble that other people get into. But anyhow, thank you guys so much. Oh, I should ask one more time. Big Sib, please give your contact.
B Sibley. SIB as in boy, LEY 97 at gmail.com. And then the Big Sib YouTube channel. It'll pop up as soon as you type in the Big Sib. I've got a big oak tree as my avatar.
No lie in that avatar. Well,
Right.
Except that it's made out of pixels. So we do have to compromise in the modern age. But there it is, folks. That's hour 2+ of episode 437. And I'd like to wish you all a happy, healthy, and higher-minded new era. And if you're going to defend your rights, learn what your rights are and then learn how to properly defend them. Do not screw around with those people wearing uniforms because bad things can happen. There it is, man. Cheers.
Belief is the enemy of knowing.